I say one of my favorite tools is Hyperbarics. Hyperbarics has a lot of the same releases a lot of the same growth factors and has a lot of the same anti-inflammatory properties
Mhm.
as a lot of the peptides, and even the
Yeah.
psychedelics have similar things. I'm not going back into surgery. I'm not going back into the traditional medicine model because I realized what really excited me was taking people who are already healthy, healthy,
Mhm.
depending
Yeah.
on who you're comparing them to, but like high performing people and like
Yeah.
helping them perform better. Like
Right.
it's way more exciting to me than handing out
Yeah.
pills. And right. And so I was
Yeah.
like, well, I want to do that. And so um, I got out of the military. I opened a brick and mortar that was like a concierge so I could spend 3 or 4 hours with my patients and do that.
Mhm.
Um, and then the SEALs kept haranguing me to make a product out of the sleep supplement, like because they were having
All
to go
right. Okay.
buy
Yeah. Yeah.
this is
Yeah.
pre Amazon Prime, so they were having to drive around to all the different health food stores and buy powders and liquids and 90 days here, 30 days here, and like it was a pain in the ass. And they're just like, "Can you make us a product?" And so I
Yeah. So
had
you
no
private
interest.
labeled what was working, right? Yeah.
Yeah, and I was like, I have no interest in being a supplement salesman, and but yeah, I'll look into it. And so anyway, I said I'll take a year off of practice. I'll just do private consulting over Zoom, like virtual, right? And I'll
Yeah.
start the supplement company up, and then I'll go back into private practice. And then that was 10 years ago, and I'm still running the supplement business and still doing virtual
Yeah.
practice. So
Yeah.
so it just ended up being my life. And with the SEALs, we used to have these pre and post retreats. So before they deployed and after they got back, we'd take their whole families out to like a resort and spend 2 or 3 days
Okay.
integrating them,
Right.
talking about what they're going to experience, about what they're part, giving them resources, and then reintegrating when they're coming back, like, getting the warriors to turn the dial way down, right? Like,
Right. 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 Get out.
decrease the
Yeah.
intensity.
Yeah.
Um, and so we would do that, and we'd bring in like people who were there motivated to hear. So New York Times bestsellers and people who were big in the health influence space then, though we didn't call it that. So guys like Rob Wolf and Chris Kresser and
All right.
like Dave Grossman came and talked about the psychology of killing, like those types of things. And then they would always have me lecture because they have me for free, so why
Yeah.
not?
You were
So
there
so I
anyway.
would I would just talk to the SEALs about sleep and
Yeah.
how it affects hormones. Just talk
Mhm.
about talk about anabolic hormones, talk about their testosterone, talk about their growth hormone, talk about their estradiol levels, how sleep
That's what they
affects
want to
it,
know.
body comp.
Yeah.
That's enough. So motivated them. They started taking the supplement, but I shared the stage with all these great guys who were all over the world lecturing and had podcasts and all that. And I was the only one talking about sleep at all
Mm.
in those days. And I was definitely the only guy talking about sleep as a performance tool. And so I just ended up on a lot of podcasts and a lot of lectures. And then I just became the sleep guy, although, that's like 10% of what I do. Like,
Right.
I do, I do kind of all lifestyle stuff. And then I work
Right.
with, as we talk about, hormones and peptides and SARMs and SERMs and hyperbarics and psychedelics and freaking
Right. It
meditation,
all
like
right.
whatever,
Whatever you can deploy for that to
whatever
reach
works.
your
Right.
ultimate goal. Yeah. Whatever
Right.
works. Yeah. Yeah.
Whatever works. And
But you usually get typecast that way. Like I'm known as a steroids guy, but I'm a little bit more
yeah,
one dimensional than that.
yeah.
But it's just that's what
Yeah,
it
whatever.
turns into, you know?
You get your
Yeah.
brand however you get it, and it's hard to get
Yeah.
out of it.
Yeah.
It's
True.
typecasting, like actors, right? It's like,
Yeah.
yeah, it's like Arnold Schwarzenegger's the tough guy, like
Yeah.
like think of him as a comedic role, but he did that,
You
right?
did. Yeah.
Kindergarten Cop, it was a damn good movie, and like
Twins. Yeah, it was fun.
Twins, yeah, Twins is
Yeah.
awesome, right? But you think,
Yeah.
oh, Arnold Schwarzenegger, the Terminator, that's all you think
Right.
of, right? Yeah, yeah,
Yeah, so usually you get known for something and then you can kind of diversify, right? I mean,
yeah,
you're very well versed in HRT now
yep,
and like the psychedelics and the neurotropic agents. So maybe we can switch a little bit to the nootropics
yeah.
and the neurotropic agents because I think you've used something like cerebral license, Max, Lank to
Mhm.
kind of help people get over these conditions. So maybe we can talk a little bit about that.
Yeah. So I'd say one of my favorite tools is Hyperbarics.
Okay.
Hyperbarics has a lot of the same releases a lot of the same growth factors and has a lot of the same anti-inflammatory properties
Hmm.
as a lot of the peptides, and even the
Yeah.
psychedelics have similar things. So if I can get somebody into hyperbarics, and that's an if, because
They're
hyperbarics is very time
expensive.
consuming,
Yeah.
it's expensive. You got to travel, and a lot of people, and there's not that many of them really. Honestly, access even in America is not great. I have plenty of people that live in major cities, but they're 3 hours away from the nearest hyperbaric chamber. So that's not going to
Yeah.
work because you got to go every day for like 2 months. So that's, they're not going to do that.
Yeah, and
So
they're expensive. I mean, you can buy them, obviously,
yeah,
not as easy as you could buy a CPAP machine or an infrared sauna, but
right.
you could buy them, but they're expensive. And of course, if you're just starting with a hyperbaric treatment, you don't know how beneficial it is. So you might not want to dish out, $10,000, $20,000 for
Right.
one of these
Right.
machines. And of course, if you want a big one, right, where you can actually sit upright,
Right.
yeah, you spend a lot of money.
Yeah. And that's actually one of the projects I'm working on right now is we have this effort to spread hyperbarics out nationally, because there's lots of interesting research that's already been done and nobody's really put it all together. But I think I use hyperbarics as just a generalized performance tool also.
Yeah.
And most people aren't thinking of it like that. So we're doing some work in that area with professional sports teams, and hopefully we're going to make that more accessible. But yeah, so any peptide, almost any immune regulating peptide helps because right, almost all brain trauma leads to a chronically inflamed brain. So
Right.
simple things work, right? BPC 157 and TB 500, like just
Mhm.
anti-inflammatory things. Even
Yeah.
thymosin can help, right? But then you have like things like dihexa. I find that works a lot better as the cream that they put on the back of their
Oh,
neck
there's a
instead of
cream
the
of that?
capsules.
I
What's
didn't
that?
know that. I
Yeah,
didn't know there was a cream of that. So I ran some experiments with dihex and I looked into the research and I saw that it has a huge spike in BDNF, like brain-derived
yeah,
neurotropic
yeah.
factor, although there was only one or two studies. But I found that with consecutive use, it starts to act a little bit more as a stimulant. So
Oh,
I would
I
use
did
it for,
not know that. I did not know that. That's
yeah.
cool.
So
That's good now.
I'm usually pretty sensitive to these nootropics because I'm fully optimized. So
Right.
after like a week of consecutive use, I'm like pre-wired.
Okay. Well,
Yeah.
I find dihexa, um, so it's hard to parse them out, right? So like, you have all the usual, you have dihexa, you have Cmax, you have Selink, you have
Mhm.
cerebrolysin, obviously. There's a lot of overlap to how their mechanisms
True.
of actions are
Yeah.
considered. And so it's like, which one's working the best? I don't know. So honestly, in the States now, I, a lot of my protocol is determined by what I have access to, so,
Yeah. And they're all banned now
yeah,
under
because
Article
they're banning all
503A.
sorts of things, and
Yeah.
even before they banned them, just the compounding pharmacies didn't always have it. There's variation because the FDA has always been after compounding pharmacies, and
Yeah.
so they get cracked down on for this ingredient or that ingredient, and they don't make it or they're backlogged on it, and so it's a hard thing to do this kind of practice because most of my time is spent tracking down pharmaceuticals and
Yeah.
and then making sure that they've been delivered, because the compounding pharmacies just don't communicate that well. So
Yeah.
usually I just always give dihexa just because I've seen the research and I've seen personal results. I've been using it like
Okay.
I guess 5 years now,
Mhm.
and I've seen it. I believe it has really good anti-inflammatory effects.
Mhm.
I think is the primary benefit. But again, all these nootropic factors are stimulated. Cerebrolysin though is my favorite. I mean
Yeah.
that stuff's liquid gold. And I used to do the 10 cc's a day for a 10-day.
Uh-huh. Yeah.
That was the
That's
original
a hefty
protocol of
one.
it.
Yeah.
But now I've moved to infusions for guys. So now they're doing anywhere from 30 to 40 ml for like 4 weeks, Monday
But
through
that's
Friday for
the
4 weeks.
IV one then, right? The
Yeah,
slow drip
yeah,
IV. Yeah. Yeah.
yeah. So a small IV, like 100 mLs, but just infused that way. Um, Obviously, great. It again. I'm not going to drill a hole in people's heads and study their brain chemistry, but the purported benefits of them seem to
Seem
match
to
what I
be
get.
amazing.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
So you
So
see
I
people
I
come
see
off of,
big I see
yeah.
big cognitive enhances really quickly, like really
Yeah.
quickly. Within the
Mhm.
first week of treatment,
Yeah.
they notice their cognition, and then by a month, everybody they know is noticing their cognition.
Yeah.
Um, so I think that one's great. Obviously, that one does BDNF and also glial cell derived neurotropic
Yeah.
factors. It enhances stem cell recruitment in the brain.
Mhm.
Hyperbarics does stem cell recruitment in the brain great. So if I can combine hyperbarics and those two, like that's great
Yeah.
too.
That makes sense. Makes sense to do
Silank,
it because you get the anti-inflammatory and the growth factors releasing.
yeah,
And if you're going to do an IV anyway over an hour, might as
right,
well do that in the hyperbaric, right? I mean, you're not
right,
going anywhere.
yeah.
So
So there's huge synergy to that. I like Solank is mainly an anxiolytic.
yeah.